I'm Kevin Gross, a fractal artist from Goshen, India.
How did you get interested in fractal art?
I got interested in fractals about 20 years ago. I was working in computing and was at a conference, and just as a side mention, somebody brought up a program they had that made fractals and talked about them. I thought it was pretty interesting, and he included a copy of the program in his abstract. So I took it home and typed it into my computer and started playing around with them. And even with that primitive software and the computers of the day, there was something special about fractals. We're talking about the late 80s. So most computer graphics in those days, you were talking about those outline sketch shapes, or maybe something made up of polygons or squares with a little bit of shading, and that was it. That was the computer graphics of the day. And fractals just seemed to have a lot of organic curves and richness and color that was, well, it was like the real world.
Well, why don't you show us a couple of the pieces that...
This one's called Infinite Complexity, and I like it because you can follow the structure down deeper and deeper in the image. I started working with a program back then called Fractal. That was sort of a collaboration of programmers across the world, and it was a free program. This one's called Summer Sunset for obvious reasons. It's a fractal, but really reminds me of an August day. Question, fractals are images that have self-similarity of scale, so that when you have a certain shape in a fractal, if you blow it up, that shape is actually built out of similar shapes. And if you blow them up, those shapes are built out of similar shapes. And so you've got this same pattern repeating over and over on different scales as you zoom in. And that's the kind of way that nature works with things, that similarity on scale. And using different equations, you can get different looks with it, but that idea that there's this complexity inherent in nature that people didn't really even understand before the 70s, and computers that were finally able to start uncovering some of this. And it's just real neat to be exploring these natural mathematical landscapes that are there. Nobody created. They're already there in the math, and then using them to create more art.
Would it be...
This one is a Mandelbrot fractal called Blue Earth Soda.
That's cool.
This one is called Embraced by the Vines of Life, and sometimes finding the title is the most fun part of the process.
Would it be fair to say that in a real primitive way, a fractal is like putting a mirror in front of you and behind you and looking deeper and deeper and deeper? Or is that kind of off?
It's a little bit different in that those are just repeating the same thing exactly over and over. What goes on in fractals, the different scales are not exact replicas. There's still change and variation and transition involved. And so there's some similarity to that, but like there's a classic shape to the Mandelbrot fractal, which is a real commonly one that people see pictured about.
Is that the one that looks like a fern, kind of?
This is the one that has the two sort of almost a heart shaped on its side.
Okay.
And as you zoom in, you see lots of different structures, but then in the midst of this other structure, you see another little form of that same type come up. A little bit different, and you see that theme popping up. This is a hybrid of a flower photograph and fractal work. I enjoy photographing flowers and thought I'd combine the two. This is a flame fractal, a type of fractal I've gotten into in the last couple of years.
Cool. Thanks for sharing your fractals with Michiana Art News today.